Welcome back to another episode of The Banana Show, where we speak about a variety of topics, self-improvement and mental health related. I'm your host, Anna Banana, and today we're going to have a special guest from New Zealand, JT. He is the host of a paranormal activity podcast and also has a lot of experience with mental health and suicide, considering a lot of his family members have passed from suicide. And so I am happy to speak with him about having depression and anxiety and how he has navigated that. Good morning, because it's actually morning right now when I'm recording. And obviously, because I have the puffy eyes and stuff, the morning face. But I'm glad to get into it. Remember to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. If you're listening from Apple Podcasts, don't forget to leave a review, a positive one, so that I can reach more people. Thank you for continuing to support the podcast. And without further ado, we're going to get into the interview. So yeah, I'm a bit excited because this guest is from New Zealand. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into the show. So I want to thank you for joining me today on the podcast, JT. How are you doing today?
Yeah, of course, it's my pleasure. And yeah, I'm doing really well. It's with the time difference, it's like the middle of the night right now. It's about 1 in the morning, so it's a good time. There's no noises going on.
Oh, but I don't think your mic would pick that up though.
You'd be surprised. I have a major road just out here, and when they close the motorway at night, all of the trucks come up and down, but it's not picking it up right now, thankfully, so it's good. But in the day, sometimes you will hear it, yeah.
Oh, I understand. So we're going to go and get right into it,
Yeah,
into the podcast. So,
of course.
what does depression mean to you, or what has their experience been like?
So one thing I'm always very careful with personally in life is that, like, for example, even though I'm a clinical depressant and I've been diagnosed many years ago, my depression doesn't mean that I understand someone else's depression, because we all go through these things differently and we all process them differently and we all experience them differently. Just a good example is like pain. Some people, you can cut their finger and they won't do anything. Some people will pass out. So for me personally, yeah, the best way for me to describe my own journey and some of the things I've gone through with depression, it's not like some people think it's as easy as just going, snap your fingers, snap out of it, just go and do
Hmm.
something, feel better. But it's not necessarily that way. And oftentimes for me, when I get depressive episodes, it's not like you're thinking suicidal thoughts all the time, or you're thinking the world is terrible and I don't want to live. It's much more just you struggle to even put on your shoes. You struggle to do very simple things, and things that so often are very easy for us. Like most of the time, you could say to me, "Hey, JT, what's 2 plus 2?" And I will immediately go 4. But if I'm in a bad state like that, if I'm going through a depressive episode, I'll sit there and I'll go 2 plus 2 and I'll say,
Like brain
um,
fog.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Perfect example. Like brain fog and very simple things that on a day-to-day basis we take for granted. It can be
Yeah.
so difficult. Yeah. As simple as remembering a phone number or remembering your address. Sometimes when you're going through it, it's just like you feel overwhelmed. It's like I say, everything seems very difficult. Even something as simple as when our friends reach out to us and text us or message us or call us, it's just sometimes you feel overwhelmed and you don't answer the phone or you don't reply. And that's why for me, again, everyone's journey is different, but I can definitely feel for those people and I have empathy for people going through it, because it's not as simple as what the movies and
Made it
for years
seem.
and TV make it seem. Exactly.
I've had a lot of experience what you're talking about because I'm also diagnosed with clinical depression, and I have times when I can't even bathe, I can't brush my teeth, I just lay
Yeah.
in the bed I probably eat just for sustenance, not anything that's good for me, just something that it's easily put in my body to keep it alive. So I've had those situations and it's hard to get out of it. That's why when I have the burst of happiness or the burst of energy, I try to get as much things done.
That's it. I fully agree. And that's why sometimes people look at me and they say, "Oh, you're a workaholic or you're always pushing
Yeah.
yourself." But you're right. That's exactly it. Because with the depressive cycle that I go through, as much as I can have the negative, when I have the positive, it's really, really high, very euphoric, full of energy, like you
Yeah.
say. And yeah, so when you're in that mood, perfect. You understand exactly how my
Yeah.
mind works as well. So when you're in that mood, you want to use every moment of it. I fully agree.
Yeah, that's what I even do with my podcast because I know how I get sometimes. So what I'll do when I get like that burst of happiness and the burst of energy, I'll record all first 5 episodes and just put them down because I know that sometimes I can't control my feelings and I don't want it to affect my work and my work ethic so much so that I'm not consistent with putting out episodes.
Yeah.
So I edit them and premiere them so that I know that, you know, whenever I'm feeling like this, it won't affect my work. So I totally understand.
Yeah, and then I again, you seem to have a very similar experience to me. And then once you're in that negative thought or that spiral, like you say, if you don't release an episode, every time you think about it, you feel bad. You feel like you're letting people down, you're disappointing people, and it just makes it worse and
It makes
worse
it
and worse.
worse.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
I've found a way around it, which has been working for the most part. So with other people with depression, have you encountered anybody that was severely depressed or depressed similar to you?
oh yeah, I've definitely known people in my life who have had similar struggles. Now, I've not been to Jamaica, but I can tell you from almost every culture that I've been involved with, for men, it's very hard because we're expected to be strong, to be the male example, and you don't talk about those feelings or those thoughts because people are so concerned about what society will think, what my family will think of me. I was very fortunate, and the reason I'm different is even though I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm a little older generation, but I was raised mostly by my mother, and my mother was like both parents in one. She taught me to do the things my dad should have, like hunt and cook and fish, but also,
That
yeah,
sounds fun.
yeah. My mom was like, I'm so fortunate I had my mom in my life. She meant everything to me. And so I was very fortunate that I wasn't afraid to be in touch with my emotional side as some men are. And I've known guys, like I say, when I was quite young, my stepsister's partner, he seemed to be a really good guy. I was young, so maybe I don't know all the ins and outs, but he ended up committing suicide because they
Oh.
were going back and forth and they were breaking up and back on and off. And so from a young age, I would see these examples of men who couldn't cope or they felt like they couldn't express those feelings. Like I have a very close friend here who's like a big brother to me. He's 10 years older. And again, because he's 10 years older and he's got that very macho attitude, I can't talk about it. He lost his partner to brain cancer. She had a brain tumor and passed away. And so he struggles to even talk to me, and we're like brothers, but he doesn't
Wow.
want to bring out those thoughts. But I always tell him, if you're having a bad day or you're thinking about something like self-harm or whatever, I don't care. You call me, because if I find out, if you're in the hospital, I'm going to come beat you up, for not telling me what's going on. I want to be here. And that's why I always say, even though I don't do my program, the program about mental health and that all the time anymore,
Hmm.
anytime, day or night, I always say to the listeners, if you don't have anyone else to talk to, you've got me. You can get a hold of me because I've been in those situations. And sometimes you just need someone to listen and understand. All they have to do is say, yes, I understand. I've been there. And oftentimes just feeling we're not alone makes a big difference.
That's true. And I do understand what you mean by men not having people to talk about because here in Jamaica, we have this very toxic masculinity mentality where men should provide and they shouldn't have feelings. And you will even see it come out when raising children, whereas if a little girl falls, you'll take her up and brush her off and hush her. But if a guy or a baby boy falls, you'll be like, leave him alone. He needs to get stronger.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
right. That's not right. But we can change that in terms of building communities for ourselves. You might not feel comfortable as a man talking to everybody because that's not you, but you need
Of
to
course.
build a community, your own personal community of either guys or girls that you feel like you could go to and talk to, because it's very important to get out all those emotions, because when you don't, it's like a keeping in waste in your system. It
Yeah.
eventually poisons you. It's not good.
And I've been really happy lately in the media, especially in the US, that a lot of like sports figures have been coming forward and talking about depression and issues they've had because right or wrong, I mean, most of the time when we as a world we think about the most macho of the men in the world, we think of sports figures. And so
Yeah.
for them to talk about it and them to address that, hey, even I've gone through this, it really makes me happy that they broach these things, because many of these guys as well, they're in their 20s. And at that age, a lot of times, when I was in my 20s, I would have talked to friends and that, but I never would have gone public. So I really
Hmm.
applaud that those people will say, "Hey, look, I went through these issues. I had depression, and it's really difficult." Because for every time someone does that, I feel even if they save one person's life that felt that no one understood or they can't talk about it, they've done more than all the money in the world, because a life is worth more than any money. You
Yeah, that's
can't
true.
replace a life with money.
That's true. That's true. You can't replace life with money because money is replaceable, but life isn't. Um, I feel like in this pandemic, it has given us a voice, the mental health. Because remember back in the day, a psychiatrist and a psychologist weren't even seen as real doctors, which is sad, unfortunately. But now everybody is trying to go to therapy once they can afford it. Everybody is trying to talk about their mental health, except for the older people who still might not understand and still have been through some traumas that they haven't worked through. But I am glad that, we are opening our eyes to see that a person that commits suicide is not weak. It's
Yeah.
just that they are going through something that they feel completely alone. And the worst thing for humans to feel is completely alone and rejected.
No, I couldn't say it better myself. It's been a silent killer for a long time, and like you say, that has been the perception. My stepfather, I loved him. He was my father to me, but he was 50 years older than me. So he fought in World War II. He grew up
Whoa,
in the
that's
Great
crazy.
Depression. Yeah, and you see, that was it. Like when I went through these issues as a teenager, he used to say to my mom all the time, "Stop babying him, stop coddling him. You're making him weak, everything else." And it just made it worse for me, because then mentally I start feeling like I'm
Yeah.
disappointing him. So, and exactly what you were saying before about how you just shut down. I mean, when I was in school, I took a whole month. I barely got out of bed. I wouldn't go to school, anything. Like I just get up, go to the bathroom, basically the minimums of life of what you have to do to keep going. And you see like that, and my dad is, luckily my mom was very strong, and she said to him, "Look, I know you're trying to do your best, but you let me handle it."
I'm glad
And
she stand up for you as well.
she always did. I was very lucky.
Yeah. So have you encountered like anyone who is high functioning with depression, but you realize that they were depressed anyway? Yourself? What has
Yeah,
that experience been like?
it's it's been, I mean, I've been a manager and everything else. I mean, I've been in charge of like many $1 million worth of stock and running warehouses and
Oh,
everything else.
wow.
And this is part of the reason why I started the podcast, because I want people to know any of us can go through these things. You
Even
might look,
animals, even
yeah,
animals go through
yep,
it.
that's absolutely right. And I didn't want people to think, like they look, for example, maybe they look at my LinkedIn, my professional profile, something else, and go, oh, that guy, he will have no problems. The truth is, as I worked in management and I worked with a lot of other managers, I found out a lot of people go through what we go through. Some of them don't know how to say, like, they don't know that it's depression. They just say, I'm feeling down. Some people just don't want to cope with it, so they shut it out. But yeah, again, the main thing to me, like you were saying, it's for me, it's always been expectations. I've never wanted to disappoint anyone. I've always been a people pleaser. And even when there were times when I know for my own well-being, it was better for me to step away, I won't, because I feel my staff depend on me, my manager depends on me, the company depends on me. I have to keep going. I have to keep doing it. So what ends up happening for so many of us is that you burn yourself out mentally. And after my mom passed away, early on I was okay. I thought it was okay, and about 3 months later, like, it just basically, I fell apart. Not like had to go spend time in a asylum or anything, but just mentally, like we were talking about, things that were so simple, my day-to-day job. Like, if you were working in a restaurant, they will say, okay, first get the frying pan out and then get the oil, and then, I will get the eggs, and then I will go, oh, what do I cook the eggs? Like, I just mentally, I couldn't cope with it. Now, I was really fortunate that I had a good support structure. I had a very good manager who, he was hard on me, but when he knew I struggled, he said to the company, he said, look, John is really struggling with the stuff with his mom. I want him to go and get professional help, not just go and read a book or something. And so I was really fortunate. I could go and get that help. And again, so much of the stuff in my life, I'm sure you understand, I need to work through it. Like, yeah, doctors and all of that and counseling, they can give you advice, but at the end of the day, you have to do the
Yeah.
actual work to fix it. But I was really fortunate that I got through that. And I've seen it with other people. I mean, in Japan, we hear so many of these stories, and it's true about these people who are managers and company leaders and that, and they deal with depression. They don't know how else to do it. They don't want to disappoint people, so they commit suicide, and they don't see any other way out of their situation. And even me, because I've worked, I've always felt, if someone feels they can trust me to be responsible like a company, I never want to disappoint them.
Yeah,
But
that's a lot of pressure.
as
I
I've
think
gotten older, though, I've just realized, and that's my advice to anyone, yes, you have to earn a living, but at the end of the day, if the pressure becomes so much on you, you just can't bear it. You have to decide, is it worth me basically burning myself out to not disappoint others? Because you have to live with yourself forever. Like, you and yourself have to be friends for the rest of your life.
that's so true. And everything that you said is actually very valid. And it is important to have a support system. But personally, even though I know that I have some support, I don't feel like I have the full support that I would want. So, what is your advice to those who want to build a support system? And my condolences for your mom. I hope you are feeling a bit better about it now and know that she's always with you.
I Mom passed away in 2016. So it's been 5 years now. And unfortunately, like so many other people in the world, my mom had cancer and passed away. Um, and thank you very much. I mean, there is not a day goes by I don't think about my mom. I know, like you say, I know she's here with me, and I ask myself so often, would mom be proud of me? Would she be proud of who I've become? And I know she will be. But we always want to make our parents proud, I feel. So I will always ask myself that. But as far as building your support structure, you're right. It's not easy for everyone. And even when you feel like you've got support, there's always a part of our brain that says, am I being selfish by wanting support? Am I being selfish? Am I bothering other people? Am I disappointing other
Yeah.
people? So, my first advice to anyone going through this and trying to build that support, try to shut out that negative part of your brain and say, no, I'm going to focus on the people who are here for me. Focus on the people who have, even if, let's say, you have a family of 20 people and only that one person is there for you. That's all it takes sometimes to help us start bridging that gap. And as you were saying before, oftentimes the older generations, they don't understand, or they may not know depression by that term. They may
Yeah.
hear it and they look at it on TV and go, "Oh, why is that person depressed?" But oftentimes, especially like mothers and grandmothers, when they talk about like postpartum depression and after having children, they know it another way. So my advice though is definitely don't keep tearing yourself down and keep saying, "I don't deserve to get help. I don't deserve to bother other people."
Oh
To this day,
yeah.
yeah, I always do it still. I don't want to bother people. I don't want to take up people's time in that. Realize that if the people are offering to help you, they want to be there for you. Don't feel like you're a burden, because they would much rather have you ask for their support and help than end your life or just shut down and maybe lose your home or something because you're going through this and you're struggling. And it's difficult in some places, but again, there are all kinds of support networks now with the internet. Like now, I mean, if you would have said to me when I was in school, "Oh, we'll be having this conversation, you're in Jamaica and I'm in New Zealand," I would say, "Yeah, right. In what movie, like what future?" But here we are. So it's the same. I mean, look, I say it oftentimes, and that's the truth. I mean, if there's anyone out there who gets this message and they don't feel comfortable talking to anyone else, I mean it 100%. Get a hold of me. I'm here. I know what it's like. I've been there in my life, and I don't want anyone to ever feel they're completely alone and no one cares, because I'll listen. And I'm sure you're the same. I mean, I'm sure that
Yeah.
you'll listen as well. So there you go. Already, whoever it is who's struggling with this, you've already got a support structure of at least two people.
Yeah, I guess the thing is some people they have the feeling, me myself included, they have the feeling that they have to be like uh what do you call it, two-sided relationship with the person before they talk about certain things. I have the issue with that too, because I feel sometimes that when I go to people that I'm not too familiar with my problems, that I am bothering them. And it kind of makes me feel selfish that I'm coming to them with their problems and I'm not asking them what they're going through and stuff like that, which is one of the main reason why I had struggled in therapy, because I feel like I'm just coming to burden you with my problems, and you can't come to me.
I fully agree, but this is another way to look at it, and you can turn that thought pattern 180 degrees. Some people feel like, okay, this is a stranger, what are they going to think? But the other way you can look at it is, this is a stranger, what do I have to lose? This
Yeah.
person I'm going to, like me, if someone comes to me from Jamaica or US or China, maybe I'll meet them in my life, but the odds are very slim. So if you say to yourself in your mind, even if I have this embarrassment and everything else, I don't want to talk about it, sometimes it's better to talk to someone who is a stranger, quote unquote, that you haven't known in your life, because you don't have to worry about seeing your family or feeling weak or thinking that your coworkers will think you're weak or something else. And so oftentimes, I mean, this is like when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, especially, you had like the suicide hotline you will call on the phone because you're just talking to another person. But I think a lot of times, if you don't see the face and you just know them by their first name or something, some people will feel more open
Yeah.
to talk about it. It's like Alcoholics Anonymous and some of these other. That's why you only use first name in there. That's the whole theory, is that you won't feel like you're being judged by people. You just feel like you're somewhere you can talk
Oh
about what you're
yeah.
going through. Yeah, you're going through your issues, and everything that is spoken in there is confidential. You're never supposed to talk about it, just like doctor patient confidentiality. Same idea.
Yeah, that's a good way to explain all of that. I never thought about it that way. But yeah, that's a good way for people who are struggling, feeling similar to how I'm feeling. I was watching this public figure here in Jamaica, and he said that he speaks to an older therapist because she's not familiar with, because he's a YouTube star, so
Okay.
she's not familiar with his friends like a younger therapist would be. So it's
Right.
easier for him to tell her the details and not feel like, okay, she's going to go home and research who he's talking about because she's an older therapist. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's also a similar idea. But I am glad that we are bringing up this conversation. Um, I also want to talk about anxiety because I have anxiety as well. You have anxiety as well?
Yes, yes.
How do
Um,
you manage your anxiety? I feel like my depression and anxiety is kind of separate. Like I'll experience anxiety when I feel like I'm experiencing, what's that thing called? Like when you're doing something but you feel like imposter syndrome. I'll get anxiety when I'm
yeah,
feeling like
yep,
that.
yep.
And I'll get it on a regular basis when I feel like I'm not doing well.
Look, it happens to all of us, and this is why I like having these conversations because so often in our lives, like I say, for example, I've seen lots of people on TV from Jamaica, and we kind of know, but until you know someone and you know what you go through and you know what your life is like, it might as well be a movie or a story, because that's what it is. It's just a perception.
Yeah.
So oftentimes people will look at someone like me and they will say, okay, you're, for lack of a better term, you're white, you're male, you've got all of these advantages, you've got all of these things. What could you possibly have gone through in your life? But when you start talking about your life journey and your story and some of the things you've gone through, then people can say, oh, you're so much more like me than I thought. And so that's why, to me, that's one of the reasons, like I said, I wanted to start my journey, because I wanted to say to people, at the end of the day, we're all humans. And to me personally, that is the most important connection. Yes, I agree, we should all be proud of where we're from, proud of our culture, proud of being male, female, whatever we identify. I agree with that. But at the same time, never forget that we're all humans and we're all brothers and sisters everywhere. And I know that might sound like kind of hippie talk, so to speak, but the
Mhm.
older I get, I feel the more that it's the truth. And like a lot of people I've worked with here in the past, Pacific Islanders and people from other places, when I will talk to them, they'll kind of look at me like, they'll say, oh, the other Europeans don't talk to me or whatever. And I'll say, well, I'm not a European, I'm John, or I'm JT. And that's how I just break it down, because I'm just another person. It's just, I was just born with this body, but inside, I'm just a human. We're all humans. And so with anxiety, what I found was that the imposter syndrome, you're right. Even when I was managing, so often I would say to myself, oh, I'm crap, or I'm not good at my job, and I would need reassurance from other people. And when I would get that reassurance, sometimes I would say, wow, like I'm
Yeah.
actually really good, but I don't think so. Even with my programs, the same. And I'm sure you've gone through this,
I've gone
when,
through it.
especially, yeah.
Every time I have to put out an episode, I'm like, you know what, Anna, I'm not going to deal with this right now. We're just going to put it out and we're going to leave it there, because it's like if you sit down with it, you're going to obsess over it so much so that you don't even bother put it out. And then you're going to feel bad again because you didn't put it out. So what I do, I just do the work and I just put it out. I try not to be critical because it is so hard.
Yourself, like any of, I feel anyway, you're like me, my greatest enemy is my own self-doubt. And I'm
Yeah.
sure from everything you've said, it's the same for you. And one thing earlier this week in the podcaster group, somebody said, I'm just starting out. What is some advice you could give me, from someone who's been doing this a while? And I said to them, it's very important to have good quality content and, good subject matter, but don't obsess over little, like, oh, I breathed
Quality.
here, or yeah, I took a breath, or I coughed, because I told them I've spent hours obsessing over that. And the reality is, my audience, I will tell you, I know they don't know all of that goes in, and they probably don't care. Yeah, if you go and cough every 30 seconds is one thing, but all of those little things, like you say, because it's just what you're saying, it's always that imposter effect. It's always us saying, I need to be better, I've heard this, like I laugh when I hear people compare themselves to Joe Rogan. I'm like, first off, that guy has been in the public eye for years and years and years. He was on television. On top of it, he's been doing his podcast for like 8 or 10 years, and he has all the money in the world for producers and audio and everything.
Yeah.
So I tell them, the worst thing you can do, it's like you being in school and doing an art project and comparing yourself to Picasso or Leonardo da Vinci. Like, why would you do that to yourself and torture yourself? There's a reason why they are who they are, and they have their own journey, and we all have to take our own steps. So Like with me with anxiety, believe it or not, like I'm happy to talk. I'm a very open person. But for many years in my life, I was very introverted and I didn't like talking. I was, this is why I'm a writer. I like to read.
I like to
And
read too.
people, yeah. And people will say, oh, that's not you. You're an extrovert. When you go out, you always, but they don't understand the reason. Like if I go to a party and I don't know anyone, I will start talking to people. The reason is it's defense mechanism. Because if I
Really?
talk first, yeah, if I talk first, I control the conversation. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah, it
defense
does.
mechanism. Yeah. Before anyone can say anything to me or start being judgmental, if I start the conversation and start controlling the way it's going, then I have control over it in my mind. So and a lot of these things, like I say, you would probably never think that I'm an introvert, but I don't like going out in crowds of people. I deal with it when
I
I have
don't
to.
either.
Yeah. And I like people, but I don't like being in huge groups or being pushed
It,
together.
it gives me
So
anxiety.
that's exactly it. And so like me now, because I've been out of work for quite a while, I don't I only go out when I have to, like to the grocery store or whatever. I don't, because I don't commute back and forth to work. I mean, there are sometimes I won't leave the house for 3 weeks or a month at a time.
Oh, so you're
And
now working from home.
yeah, well, I don't have a day job, so to speak, so I'm not managing or anything like that.
Okay.
It's yeah, I basically work on the podcast and I do some home care. So my partner's father, I look after him because he's with us and he's okay, but he has some dementia and things, so
Yeah,
don't
I
really
get
want to
that.
leave him. Yeah, don't want to leave him alone
I have
and wonder.
experience with
Yeah,
that as well because
yeah,
my old babysitter has dementia and they will remember the things that they used to do in routine, but they won't remember like their names, your names. So you will realize they get up and they do the same thing that they used to do every day, like sweep up the yard or spread the beds, but they won't know other things.
yeah. Or they can remember when they went on holiday in 1955, but they
Yeah.
don't remember what day it is. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. And my mom did home care for many years, and she also worked in nursing homes, so she was around a lot of this, as you say. And I mean, to me, this is why like mental health and things like this, dementia, Alzheimer's, all of this, and cancer, to me, they're so important because they don't judge on if you're a male or female. They don't judge on race, religion, creed, age. Like I say, I first remember really having depression when I was like not even a teenager. And there are people who are 90 who have depression. There are pets,
Yeah.
like you say. I mean,
Pets have
yeah,
depression. Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
anxiety.
yeah. So I mean, all I'm saying is to me, like this affects everyone in the world. Anyone who says this doesn't affect me, if you go around to your circle of family and friends, guess what? It does really. When you start talking to people, you will find out, even if it's someone who like 40 years ago committed suicide or something, or uh, and at the time maybe they didn't call it depression, but they just said, oh, he drove off a cliff or something, and then you
Yeah.
find out, yeah, exactly.
It's like
So
they don't
yeah,
understand the term, but
and and
they
anxiety is, it can be so crippling, like you say, for people. And my advice really, again, we're all different, but when you've got that anxiety, just try and do a small thing and don't judge yourself. Just say, whatever I've done today, it's good enough. So for
like a
example,
mantra.
yeah, just take one small step, because every great journey starts with one step. So I'm going to give you an example. My neighbor next door, I don't like her. I don't get on with her. She's very much what you would call a toxic person. Every
Mhm.
time I have any interaction with her, she's saying to me, oh, she's complaining about something, or she's complaining about the tree dropping leaves. And literally, I have anxiety. If I see her outside, I don't want anything to do with her. Now, for months and months and months, I refuse to go for a walk because I have to walk past her house. Now, the reality is maybe 1 in 100, she will actually come out and say, but in my mind, I've
She's
got this
there waiting.
catastrophe. Yes, exactly. She's waiting. She's going to bother me. So, using this as an example to your listeners, whatever that anxiety may be, just try and take one small step. So even if that step is, okay, today I'm going to go out of my door and I'm going to go for a walk. And if I see her, I will turn around and go home. Fine. Don't judge yourself. And then maybe the next time you will go a little further. And then maybe the next time you will just walk by and wave to her. And if she complains, you just say, "Hey, look, sorry, I'm off on my exercise. I'll see you later." But again, as you said, your journey seems to be very similar with mine.
Yeah,
And
because I
when
have
you're
that experience too
when you're
with
in that very beginning, though, it's so hard to see. Like, you will say, "Oh, I'll never get to where I can go and do this," but you can only do it small steps at a time. So, like, I just feel it's so important we don't judge ourselves and don't feel you're a failure just because like, let's say you said to yourself, "I'm going to get out of bed today at 8 o'clock in the morning," and you got out of bed at 9. Well, at least you got out of bed. It's better
exactly.
than if you just stayed in bed. Yeah, exactly. The whole day. So I think that it's human nature. We're very hard on ourselves, but slowly by measures, you will get where you need to go. And like I say, if it's half a step today, it's better than where you were yesterday. At least you took a half a step forward.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I've similar experience, and sometimes depression works like this. If you don't try to go against it, it works like this, where you spend the whole day in bed, and then you get really sad that you spend the whole day in bed, and then you spend the day in bed because you're sad that you spend the day in bed. So I completely understand. It's about getting up and taking the first step, even if because you can't run before you walk, you know?
Yeah, and again, I mean, there are things. So, for example, like me, one of my phobias, one of the things I will never do is skydiving. Right? I, I don't like. If you take me on a high mountain, I'm fine, but it's being close to the edge, like feeling I'm gonna fall. Like, I don't like that feeling. So even if I said, "Okay, I'm going to conquer this fear," if I decided one day, like, I'm gonna do it, and I was going to the plane, if I stopped and said, "No, I can't do this," don't judge ourselves. Like, each of us ourselves, we need to learn. Don't feel you failed. I mean, you still took 99 of the steps. You just didn't jump. I mean, you still went through it. You tried to process dealing with it, everything else. It doesn't make you a failure. It just, you've gotten further ahead today than you were before. And I think this is what a lot of times when any of us are in these situations, this is why we don't even try, because our mind tells us you will fail no matter what. So why try?
And
But
it's
if
not
you
even
don't try,
that.
you'll never know. Yeah.
Sometimes it's not even the fact that we will fail, is the fact that people see us failing. We
Yeah.
feel like people will see us failing, and we are ashamed of that because failing has such a negative thing towards it. So
There's a one thing that's helped me a lot. I'm not as good at it as I should be, but things like meditation
yeah, I
and
do meditation every day actually.
meditation, mindfulness, so trying to be present in the moment you're in. Not There's a famous quote from the Dalai Lama, and I really enjoy it. And he basically says, yesterday is gone, tomorrow is not here. You can only focus on now. And it's really hard to put that into practice because, of course, all of us are always thinking, how will I pay my bills? What will I do when I retire? But like you say, your mind can race away and just get caught up in these things. And then in the meanwhile, you're trying to enjoy what's going on in your life and you can't. You're laying asleep at night because you're worried about what's going to happen at work the next day. And for me personally, I find out so often that whatever I am fearing, it never ends up being that bad. Like, even when, like, I got a meeting at work I don't want to go to, I know it's going to be bad. When it actually happens, it's not as bad as I
Yeah.
thought. It may be bad, but it's never like what my brain says.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
another really good piece of advice I've heard about things like this is that they say, what are you dealing with today that's bad? Okay. And let's say, for example, your car breaks down, or you got in a fight with your partner, or whatever it is. Think to yourself, okay, if this would have happened 1 year ago, would I be worried about it now? Would it still be affecting my life? And if the answer is no, you should try to move past it. Now, there are going to be major things in our life. Like I say, we have a divorce maybe, or we lose a loved one, passes away. That's a bit different. But so many of the day-to-day things that we really catastrophize and we go, this is the end of everything. It's not. And if you look at it through that prism and you say, if this happened last year, would I still be upset about it? Like losing my job, right? I was made redundant. At the time, of course, I was upset. And yeah, don't get me wrong, I would like to be earning some money. But when I look back at it, if that didn't happen, I would not be doing this. I never would have done this, and I'm so happy that it happened because I've got, no matter what happens, I know that when I pass away, when I leave the earth, I've left something behind. And that was
Yeah,
one of the reasons I wanted to do the
the
program because
podcast.
yeah, yeah. That's it. I wanted to write a book, and maybe I will one day, but I started doing it and it was so much work. Then I started looking into doing podcasting. I said, "Hey, you know what? Actually, and so I know that no matter what happens, yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to be super famous, and I don't care. But at least I've left something. And by doing some of these programs like we're doing now, I've left something positive as well. Because hopefully, some of the people struggling with what we've gone through, if it helps one person, to me, it's worth it.
Yeah, it is worth it. And that's for the same reason why I started my podcast too, so that I can help others because, Jamaica itself it's progressing with the young people, but it's not progressive enough where they have these type of conversations. It's just now you're seeing like a peak over the hill, but we're not where we need to be in terms of mental health. And I am trying to work on that as well. So
Well,
yeah.
well, even here, you would think New Zealand is like Western country or European country. But for many years here, I mean, depression and all of that, we didn't really talk about it in the way we should have. It's only been in the last 4 or 5 years where you
Mm-hmm.
started seeing like government initiatives. And you've also had like some famous people here, sports figures, and that basically say it's okay if you're not feeling right. Talk to people, bring it up with people. There's a comedian here. We have a saying, and maybe it's the same in Jamaica. We have a saying where we say world famous in New Zealand. So like everyone here knows that person, but if I say the name, you will go, I've got no idea. So one of these
Oh,
people who's a comedian, he's well known in New Zealand. He started doing this like big push for mental health, and some former rugby players and that. And I've been really happy to see it because me, at the end of the day, like I have no stigma to talk about it, but I know
I
there's
don't.
still lots of people who do. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that, technology, even though it has its negative effects, if it wasn't progress right now, I couldn't be sitting right here having this conversation. So I am grateful for that, and I'm grateful for the fact that we can communicate with people all over the world to talk about this issue that we're facing. So yeah.
And what you said before about COVID and the after effects and everything else. Look, you're so right. I think that it is definitely something. I'm not glad that, obviously
COVID
we've had the
happened and
pandemic
people
and all
died.
that, but yeah, but I am glad that it's shown a spotlight on people being isolated, being at home, everything else, the effects on people's mental health and well-being. I mean, like I say, I'm actually better suited to it than a lot of people because yes, I miss friends and family, don't get me wrong, but I don't need to be around a throng of people all the
Yeah,
time.
I'm
But
very
but
introverted, so it's not affecting me like how it might affect others. And plus, my hobbies, I like to go outside, don't get me wrong, but I like to read as well. So I do that a lot. So it's not affecting me as much as it would affect someone that's used to being around a lot of people.
yeah. But I mean, even me, like not being in the workforce and that, I miss kind of the day-to-day conversation with coworkers and that, and just general pleasantries of you, whatever you talk about. I mean, if it's sports or just how are you doing today, I will admit it was very strange for me, especially after about the first 3 months. And now, like I've got a friend who podcasting has kind of reconnected us. We went to school together many years ago, and he's like audio. He's worked in audio and worked for radio stations and that in the U.S. And they have a podcast, and so I will go on there sometimes. And this kind
That
of
sounds
office, yeah, well, this office banter we talk about, like I get my fix for that by going on there because we just talk about things in general that I wouldn't cover on my program. So
oh,
yeah, I'm lucky I have that kind of outlet, but I know it's been so hard, and especially for places where like big family gatherings and that, people coming together is so important. I can imagine it's got to be so difficult for people who've had a way of life for as long as they can remember, and then all of a sudden they just
it's
can't do it.
switched up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's not for a month, it's for like now over a
Two
year, you know?
years, I think. Two
Yeah.
years or a year. From 2019, COVID hit Jamaica in December and the lockdown started in March.
Yeah, our lockdown was in March as well. And because we're so isolated, we were fortunate we didn't get hit nearly as soon as, like you say. I know in the US it was kind of November, December. And when I realized it was so serious was when the NBA shut down, because there's so much money involved in the, like, NBA and the NFL and that. And when they said we're going to like stop the season, I was shocked because I didn't realize it was quite that severe, but when they said that, I said, "Whoa,"
And the
because
World
it's like,
Cup
yeah,
stopped.
yeah, and the World Cup, yeah, and the Olympics, because we
Mhm.
know how many billions of dollars are involved. And when companies shut something down that much money, whoa, okay, yeah, this is serious. Yeah.
I'm just glad that I'm safe and I'm glad that you're keeping safe as well. And
We're very fortunate here. We're far. Even people think we're like right next door to Australia, but we're over 2,000 kilometers from Australia. So we're very fortunate.
and
It's
you guys
difficult
are okay
sometimes.
over there.
Yeah, we've only had a total of a few hundred cases. Most of the cases are caught at the border. So people fly in, they have COVID, and they go into isolation. But I think we've only had about 20 deaths total out of a population of about 5 million. So we've been very
Oh,
fortunate. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Because our country depend on tourism, I feel
Ours,
like
ours too.
I feel like, that's what caused the rapid cases. Not solely, apart from people not obeying because Jamaican people are unruly sometimes and they don't like to listen. So yes, it's like you tell them don't go outside and they go outside because they tell them don't go outside. That's how
Yeah.
they are. So
Yeah.
it's really bad out here. Hospitals are at capacity and we didn't even have functioning hospitals in the first place. So that even make it worse. But the vaccine is coming soon. Well, some people are even half vaccinated. They have one shot already and they haven't got the second one. It's chaos, but I'm glad I'm okay. And my friends and family are okay. And I just hope that those who are not okay can cope,
Well,
until we get through this.
and then again, like you say, like this situation, even now, even though like in the US and a lot of countries it's gotten better, still that's creating so much anxiety for people because
Mhm.
they're still concerned. What if I get it before I can get my shot? What if I lose my job? Yeah, I can't imagine. Like I say, oftentimes I do believe things happen for a reason. And like, losing my job and all that at the time, it was really difficult. But going through all of this, I've like I've been very fortunate. I'm not affected because I'm not worried about choosing to go to work or, like, oh, do I get sick or not? Well, I already had lost my job and a lot of companies weren't hiring. And I've worked for a long time in my life. I was fortunate that, save money and everything else so that, yeah, don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm living the high life, but I can get by, can scrape by, can we can pay the bills. And so again, it's just been one of those situations where going through this and going through COVID, I've been very fortunate because I've not been impacted nearly as much as even people here. But we've gone, like, because our city is the biggest city by far in the country, 1/3 of the country lives in my city. And we've had about 3 lockdowns. We had one which was like basically, everyone stays home and you go out and go for a walk once in a while. We had that for 1 month last March. And then we've
Mhm.
had some that are like one level below, like you can still go out, but you can't go to restaurants or anything like that. And then we have had a few of those. But again, like, because we're so far away and like in the Caribbean, it's easy to go from island to island on boats, and that here, like, it's really hard to get to us because there's nothing around us. And again, we're like in the middle of the ocean. It's like trying to get from the Caribbean to Europe almost. It's you're not just gonna hop
Oh,
in. Yeah, you're not gonna
also
hop in the
it's a
speedboat.
bit of
Yeah.
an advantage for you guys to be out there and not connected to a mainland.
For years and years it's been a negative because I mean, to fly from here to the US, like to California, it's a 14-hour flight.
Oh
And to go,
Lord.
yeah, and to go to Europe, it's even longer. I think it's 18 hours. But now, like, that negative has been a positive through this because we've been really isolated. And like, I'm not shaming, our government has done well, but like a lot of things the government takes credit for, it's like, yeah, but we have these advantages a lot of countries don't, because we are in the middle of the ocean, because we do have a good health system, like you say, and everything else. I'm not saying they haven't played their part, but I don't think it would matter which of our parties was in government. I think we would have had a pretty good result compared to a lot of countries, is all
Oh,
I'm saying.
because of where you guys are located.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like I can't even. I mean, it's almost like how Hawaii is so far away from the U.S. It's kind of like that. Like we're that far
Oh,
away from Australia. Yeah,
oh,
it's a 5 hour flight to go from here to Australia.
that's still a bit long.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like people, a lot of people, especially in the U.S., they think like us and Australia are right next to each other. It's like,
Yeah, I used to think that too, but I get it. So I'm going to draw the podcast to an end before the
yeah, of
times
course.
the time comes out, and I'm thanking you for coming. I really do enjoy this episode. You have opened my mind to other perspectives, and I am grateful for that. And I hope I can have you on
Yeah,
another time. And I want to thank those who are listening and will continue to support the podcast. You are appreciated, and I will see you guys in another episode.